Most people think they know themselves. They know their name, their routine, what they do for a living, what they like and dislike. But that is not self-knowledge. That is familiarity. And familiarity is comfortable, not truthful. Real self-discovery begins the moment comfort is interrupted. The moment you realize that even though your life is moving, something inside you feels paused. Not broken, not dramatic. Just quiet, in a way that feels unfamiliar. Here is the uncomfortable truth most people avoid. You can be functional and still be disconnected from yourself. You can wake up early, meet expectations, stay busy, and still feel like you are living someone else's rhythm. That tension you sometimes feel for no clear reason is not confusion. It is awareness trying to surface. Self-improvement has taught us to fix, optimize, upgrade. But no one taught us how to listen. No one taught us how to sit with the parts of ourselves that were shaped by survival, not choice. This is why growth feels exhausting for so many people. They are trying to build a better life on top of an identity they never questioned. This video is not about becoming a new person. It is about meeting the one who has been quietly waiting beneath habits, roles, and expectations. The version of you that existed before you learned what was acceptable, impressive, or safe. If something in you has been feeling restless, distant, or oddly numb, stay here. That feeling is not a problem to solve. It is a signal. And what comes next depends on whether you are willing to look at it honestly. Most people do not lose themselves all at once. They drift away in small, reasonable steps. 1. Compromise at a time. One decision made for convenience instead of alignment. One season of ignoring their inner voice because life felt demanding. Over time, that inner voice does not disappear. It just gets quieter. And eventually, silence feels normal. This is the silent crisis no one talks about. Not depression, not failure, but disconnection, disguised as productivity. You are doing everything you are supposed to do, yet something feels off. Not painful enough to panic. Not clear enough to explain, just heavy enough to notice when things slow down. Autopilot feels safe because it removes responsibility for choice. When you live on momentum, you do not have to ask difficult questions. You do not have to confront whether the life you are living reflects who you actually are. But the cost of that safety is subtle. You begin reacting instead of choosing. You measure your worth by output. You confuse motion with meaning. The moment you stop, even briefly, discomfort appears. Not because something is wrong, but because something has been ignored. That discomfort is often labeled as boredom, lack of motivation, or restlessness. In reality, it is self-awareness, knocking quietly, asking for attention. Self-discovery does not start with answers. It starts with noticing where you are no longer present in your own life. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. The question is not whether autopilot exists. The question is how long you are willing to let it decide for you. Self-improvement promised clarity, confidence, and control. What it often delivers is pressure. The pressure to constantly fix yourself, to upgrade your habits, to optimize your mornings, to become more disciplined, more focused, more driven. Somewhere along the way, improvement quietly replaced understanding, and no one stopped to question whether that was healthy. Here is the lie hidden beneath most self-improvement advice. It assumes that something is wrong with you, not broken enough to say it out loud, but flawed enough to keep chasing the next version of yourself. So you push harder. You consume more content. You adopt routines that look good, but feel heavy. And when consistency fails, you blame yourself instead of the method. Growth that begins with self-rejection never feels peaceful. It feels urgent, restless, addictive. You are not improving because you are aligned. You are improving because you are afraid of staying the same. That fear is rarely acknowledged, but it drives everything. It turns growth into a race with no finish line. This is why so many people feel exhausted by self-improvement. They are trying to become better without first understanding who they are. They stack behaviors on top of an identity shaped by expectations, comparison, and survival. The foundation is unstable, so nothing feels solid for long. Real growth does not start with doing more. It starts with seeing clearly, with recognizing why you want to change in the first place. Is it coming from curiosity or from pressure? From truth or from comparison? Until that question is answered, every attempt at improvement feels forced. Self-discovery changes the direction of growth. Instead of asking, "How do I fix myself?" you begin asking, "What am I responding to, and why?" That shift is subtle, but it changes everything. Because when improvement comes from understanding instead of shame, effort becomes lighter, not heavier. And that opens the door to a deeper question. Most people avoid the question of who they became in order to survive. Most people believe self-discovery is about searching, as if the real you is hidden somewhere in the future, waiting to be unlocked once you improve enough. That belief keeps you chasing, always becoming, never arriving. The truth is quieter and far less dramatic. You are not lost. You are covered. Over time, layers were added to you. Expectations, adaptations, roles you learned to play, so life would feel manageable. None of these layers are mistakes. They were intelligent responses to the environments you were in. But they are not your essence. They are strategies. And strategies are meant to be used, not lived inside forever. Self-discovery is the process of subtraction. You begin to notice which parts of your personality feel effortful, which choices require constant justification, which behaviors feel more like protection than expression. Every time something feels forced, that is a clue, not a flaw. A clue pointing back to something more honest underneath. Think about who you were before you learned what was impressive, acceptable, or safe. Before you edited your curiosity. Before you muted your instincts. That version of you did not disappear. It adapted. And now it waits for permission to re-emerge. Remembering yourself is uncomfortable because it requires letting go of identities that once kept you safe. Productivity might have protected you. Agreeableness might have kept the peace. Control might have prevented disappointment. Releasing these patterns can feel like risk, even when they no longer serve you. But here is what makes this process powerful. The moment you stop trying to reinvent yourself, something relaxes. Clarity does not arrive as a sudden revelation. It arrives as a sense of recognition. You begin to feel more like yourself, without needing to explain why. And once that feeling appears, it becomes impossible to ignore, because it leads directly to the forces that shaped who you became without your consent. You did not become who you are by accident. Long before you made conscious choices, invisible forces were already shaping your behavior, your reactions, and the way you see yourself. Most of them worked quietly, without asking for permission. And because they were subtle, they were rarely questioned. One of the strongest forces is borrowed identity. At some point, you learned who you were supposed to be in order to belong. The responsible one, the strong one, the easy one, the successful one. These identities were not chosen out of passion. They were adopted out of necessity. They helped you navigate expectations and avoid rejection. Over time, the role became familiar, and familiarity was mistaken for authenticity. Another force is emotional conditioning. You learned which emotions were welcome and which ones created discomfort for others. Maybe being calm kept things stable. Maybe being helpful earned approval. Maybe hiding vulnerability felt safer than risking misunderstanding. So you adapted. You did not stop feeling, you learned how to manage your expression of it. And that management slowly turned into self-censorship. Then there is unquestioned momentum. Life rewards continuation. Once a path is chosen, even accidentally, it becomes easier to keep moving than to stop and ask if it still fits. Momentum can look like success from the outside, while feeling hollow on the inside. But because stopping feels risky, most people keep going, telling themselves they will reflect later. These forces are not enemies. They protected you when awareness was limited and options were few. The problem begins when protection turns into identity, when coping mechanisms become personality traits, when survival strategies outlive their purpose. Self-discovery requires seeing these forces clearly, without judgment. Not to reject who you became, but to understand why you became that way. Because once you recognize what shaped you, you regain choice. And choice changes the entire relationship you have with growth, leading you to a moment most people avoid, the moment of looking directly at yourself, without roles to hide behind.